Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unlocking the Power of Knowledge with our OpenAthens Head of Product, Dan Mayers. This session is sponsored by Research Information. So just a few bits of housekeeping before I hand over to Dan. The session is being recorded, and if you'd like to view the closed captions, there is an option to turn these on in the menu bar at the bottom of your page. You can also view them in the language of your choice. So there will be time for a very short Q&A at the end of the session. So please post any questions for Dan into the Q&A box and just keep the chat box for any conversations or general queries. Over to you, Dan.
Super, thanks, Georgie. Okay, so my session is called Unlocking the Power of Knowledge, and really it is a kind of product update roadmap session. So I'm going to talk through 5 things today. I'm going to restate the purpose, who we are, what we do. I'm going to talk about some of our customers around the world and some of the research we've been doing to kind of explore what the customer needs are. I'm going to talk through the strategy, so how we are going around meeting the customer needs. I'm going to talk about the actions that come out of that strategy, so what the product sort of next iterations are going to be that are meeting that strategy. And then finally, I'm going to talk through the roadmap, kind of the medium-term roadmap, and then a bit of the kind of longer term roadmap going forward. So first up, then the purpose. So our purpose is, as many of you know, is removing barriers to knowledge. We remove barriers to knowledge by making sure that students and researchers around the world can connect to the knowledge they need to do the work they need to do. And we help them do that securely, reliably, and remotely. And we help a lot of people around the world, right? There's a map of the world. Last calendar year, up until 2 days ago, we had 250 million transfers, so students, researchers connecting to pieces of knowledge. We work with 2,688 libraries. We work with 217 publishers. And most of our customers and most of our work is in these 3 territories. So we do a lot of work with customers in the USA, UK, and Australia. But obviously, it's a big world, and there's a lot of places in the world that we aren't necessarily working with. In fact, we're currently working with 0.5%, just over 0.5% of the worldwide libraries. So there's a lot of people out there that we're not working with that we'd like to, because obviously if we want to be removing barriers to knowledge, we want to do that for as many people as we can. So we've been doing some research into what the needs are of people around the world. So we've run some projects around Latin America, some around Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. And that's formed the basis of our library user experience report, which John Bentley is going to be talking through later on. So I'm not going to steal his thunder right now. Suffice to say that the research that we've been doing on that is informing our strategy and sort of our next steps in terms of our product development, as well as making sure that the customers in existing territories all the enhancements are coming through properly. So the research that we've done is kind of collated together alongside a lot of the insights that we're getting from our sales team, from our support teams, from the interviews that we do with customers, and they're kind of coalesced into these 3 strategic themes. The first one is around removing complexity. We all recognize this is a super complex space, and what we're trying to do is make sure that it's as simple to use as possible, because the simpler it is to use, the more people can use it. The second thing is improving the user experience globally. So that's things like localization, but also through simplification, it allows people from different territories and different countries to use a service more effectively, including the end user experience. And the third thing is around helping librarians and publishers connect. So this is about recognizing that we're a holistic space. So much of our work is around libraries, but the thing doesn't work unless the libraries and publishers can work together. And the better we are at bringing those 2 sort of stakeholders together, the more effective it's going to be in removing barriers to knowledge. So we're going to take each of these sort of sections one at a time. I'll cover remove complexity first, then we'll move on to the other 2. So you can see what we're doing around the sort of complexity space. So the research I mentioned earlier surfaced a lot of really useful insights that we've kind of then brought together and tried to look at in terms of trying to meet the needs of the users. So the first one is around onboarding. So onboarding is takes quite a lot of time, and it's quite complex. So what we're trying to do is find ways that we can make that faster and make it easier for people to use. the more we can do that, the faster it is to get people up and running, the more people are going to come through. The second piece is around the resource catalogue. So we recognise that there is a lot of complexity in that particular part. People have come to us and said, look, we need to sort of make this simpler to use, more effective to use, so that we're doing a bunch of work around making improvements there. And the third piece is around reporting dashboards up and running, but there's demand for sort of improvements in how we do the reporting and the granular nature of the report that we're doing. So out of the back of those kind of three core areas, we are focusing on sort of 5 work streams, if you like, that you're going to be seeing coming through the product in the next 6 to 12 months. The first one is around, it plays to the sort of complexity piece. So it's around guided onboarding. Right now we have a lot of the stuff is handheld, so you're working closely with the oats teams and with the service teams. So what we're trying to do is create ways that we can help people onboard and get up and running on the service by themselves. That means on-platform communication, so tooltips, tutorials, walkthroughs that you can use yourself, but that are embedded in the platform as you sort of expect to see from sort of typical onboarding tutorial. Second piece is around the catalogue itself, that resource catalogue piece. There's a bunch of UX and UI work going on right now. We are redesigning some of those areas to make them simpler to use. And we're also focusing on ways that we can generate some automatic activation. So much of the activation process is quite manual. We want to move towards a more automatic process. We can do that in some cases, and we're trying to find out the best way to do that across all the publishers we work with ultimately. Third piece is around the reporting improvements. So we've made some granular improvements to the dashboard. But a lot of our customers are asking for raw reports, so that much more granular level of data, so they can do their own interrogations on the data that's coming through. So that's sort of another work stream that we're pulling together. The fourth thing is around the authentication journey itself. So many of you will have seen the authentication page changes that we're pushing through. That's gone through development and is going out now. The next stage of that piece of work is to look at sort of multi-affiliations to make sure people who have multiple affiliations can go through the authentication step as easily and efficiently as possible. And the final area is around MyAthens. So many of you know our library portal product. You'll have seen some changes coming through lately around UI enhancements and UX enhancements. So small changes to cards. One of the things we've identified out the back of the research we've done is that the setup requires some help. And again, just playing back to the guided onboarding piece, if we can do that on platform and begin to help people understand how to set it up by themselves, and that makes the whole system a lot easier to use. So that's the 3 kind of pillars, and you'll see that reflected in the roadmap a little bit later on. The second pillar that we're looking at is the global user experience. So there's kind of 2 things around this. First is proxy globalization. We recognize that the proxy is increasingly important, or is important. We're supporting a lot of proxy resources, and part of our work for the next quarter is to look at the vision for the proxy, understand what the customer needs are, understand what the sort of longer term roadmap is. So you'll be seeing some changes to that fairly soon. The first one to talk about is the globalization. So we've now got proxy servers across these territories, which makes it a lot more efficient and quicker to use. The second piece around globalization is localization. So many people are asking for other languages. Obviously, a lot of languages to choose from. We are focused on Spanish and French. So customers in Canada particularly are looking for French translations, and playing back to the research piece that we've done around Latin America, we're keen to begin to introduce localized work streams as soon as we can. That's sort of the first step's probably going to be French Canadian in a small subset of the product, and then we'll expand from there as we introduce these sort of new UI UX improvements. And then the third section is around the publisher and library connections piece. So this is just trying to find useful ways to get the libraries and publishers working together effectively and efficiently, so that we can have that kind of holistic system and make sure we are removing barriers to knowledge. So the first thing we've done is initiated a publisher. In fact, some people on the call might have been interviewees in part of this research. We have spent a lot of time talking to publishers, large and small, about what their needs are. And how we can best add value. So that is being rolled into a roadmap for the publisher service, and we'll be spinning out products and services that help meet those needs and add that value and help find ways to connect to other publishers, to other libraries rather. Second piece is around resource data quality. So this plays back to the idea of the resource catalogue. So resource catalogue requires sort of a bunch of data underpinning it. The more high quality data that is, the easier it is to make those connections between the two people. So that's kind of we've got a separate project called the Verified Resources Project, which is playing into that. And then the final piece is around the service provider reporting. So we're doing a bunch of work right now around how we can make reporting more effective for publishers. Report at a lower level of granularity. So 3 areas there. The roadmap then, this is kind of an overview of the roadmap that rolls in some of those things. You can see we are just about in the middle there, sort of February 23, May 23, so the 3rd quarter. We are currently doing a bunch of development work on MyAthens. Many of you will have seen the auth point work coming through, and also the error messages coming through, which are part of the same thing. We want to make sure that the error messages are clearer to understand, that they have the level of detail in that you need to address the problem or understand the problem, and then come back to us if there are problems that we need to help with. We've been doing a publisher discovery piece, and that's going to roll into the roadmap, the vision, and the designs against whatever services come out of that research. That sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th line down is around the UX and UI of the resource catalogue and the onboarding. Lots of design work gone into that so far, and some development has been started on it, particularly around the kind of resource catalogue piece. The reporting thread, dashboard changes been made. Rich, our product manager on the reporting side, is looking to run interviews with a number of universities and institutions around the world to better understand what's needed, and we're talking to users about what they need and how we can best service it. And then we've got the kind of resource data quality thread, which is kind of more in the design at the moment, as is the proxy piece. So they are the next big pieces of work that we'll move towards to get into development. And of course, underpinning all this is the continuing enhancement requests, making sure that we are meeting the needs of customers as they're coming through. We're triaging bugs. We're making sure the service is up and running efficiently and effectively, and the customers are happy. We are also obviously at the same time doing the architecture or sort of supporting the architecture changes and making sure that whatever the architecture that underpins the service, it's supporting these product threads that we're trying to work on. So yeah, that's the roadmap for now. There's a longer term roadmap, and that kind of just to kind of map this out. If you go from now to the future, this 3rd quarter, we've been focusing on the design around those core UX, UI, and the authentication point. The next quarter is going to be about developing the outcome of those designs. So looking at the core UX, UI, authentication point, library reporting, publishing, and continuing to run a thread of design running through it. 23, 24. So this is our kind of summer through to next summer. We'll be rolling out those changes to the resource catalogue and to the front end, planning in what the next features are based on those changes, and continuing to release that authentication point and begin to develop the publisher service. So those designs begin to come through from the Q4 work, and that then goes into development. 2025. We'll see much more significant redesigns in the UX and the UI off the back of those initial changes, and hopefully see some of those publisher services hit the market. And the 3rd sort of thread, and I guess in this place, the idea that we have three types of users. We have publisher users, customers, librarian customers, and then our end users. We think there's ways of developing it MyAthens Plus to make it more relevant to end user needs. So that will be the next part of the sort of design piece coming through, and the UX design and research. And then by 2027, we may see the first transfer in space, which would be amazing. Perhaps on Mars. That is all from me. I'm not sure what time is. How are we doing for time?
We're all right. Thanks, Dan. That all sounds really exciting. We're going to just very quickly now to some Q&A. We have had one come in, just asking, Dan, what is our relationship to other national federations?
What is OpenAthens' relationship to other national federations?
I believe so.
How do you mean? Is there a context for
that? No context. We're happy to skip if needs be, and we can sort of take some of these questions offline. We can get someone to kind of put an answer to that one if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, any questions that I can't answer right now, let's come back to them offline for sure.
That'd be great. Unless we have any last minute questions coming in, we will probably end this session here. Just to stay tuned that we've got how to complete solution, how our complete solution helps remove barriers to knowledge and future-proof the industry coming up, and how changes in browser technology may impact researchers' access to scholarly resources coming up at 3:05 GMT. Thanks again, Dan, for doing that session. Some really exciting developments coming up.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, any questions? Yeah, drop me a line.
That's great. Thanks everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.